and take over 60% of the country's land. A formal notice to withdraw from the Republic of South Africa has been served on Parliament and the seat of government at the Union Buildings in Pretoria. But who are the Abatembu? Asanda Makaka and cameraman Roy Freeman traveled to Tembuland territory in the Eastern Cape and explored the controversial claims made there by Abatembu King and its people.
What triggered this call for secession of the Tembus was the imposition of a sentence on King Buyelekhaya Dalindyebo.
The Abatembu of the Eastern Cape Province have formally served notice of their secession from South Africa in order to form the independent state of Tembuland. As part of the claim, the Abatembu wants to stake their claim to the entire KwaZulu-Natal, Western Cape, Northern Cape, and certain parts of the Free State and Gauteng provinces. Documents which Special Assignment are in possession of show that the official withdrawal notice has been served to both Parliament in Cape Town and the Union Buildings in Pretoria.
Today we are in the habit of referring to any person from the Eastern Cape as a Xhosa person. But the AmaXhosa, strictly speaking, are only those people who met the settlers in the vicinity of Grahamstown. There was a Xhosa kingdom and a Tembu kingdom and a Mpondo kingdom in what is today the Eastern Cape. So today, people might think of Abatembu as Xhosas, but in historical times, they were their own nation with their own kingdom under the rule of the Madiba royal family. Well, the Tembu kingdom, we know it's very, very old. We know that it goes back at least 25 generations before the time of the present king. So 25 generations, it must be something like 400 years. And we know that the heart of the Tembu kingdom has always been where it is today, just near the Mbashe River, on the border, more or less on the border between the districts of Mthatha and Ngobo. We know that it was a very, very strong kingdom, but it was not a stronger kingdom than the kingdom of Amampondo or the kingdom of AmaXhosa, or even the kingdom of the Amampondo Mise. It was a strong kingdom, but there were other strong kingdoms in its.
I went to visit the area that would be called East Tembuland and started at the Bumbane Great Place where King Buyelekhaya Dalindyebo lives with his family. I also found life moving at an agonizingly slow pace. It is a life that is by any standard simple. People here enjoy few of the basic services. Poverty and unemployment reign. For the young, future prospects are minimal. For the old, life simply goes on. But the real beauty lies in the land. King Buyelekhaya Dalindyebo is the son of King Sabata Dalindyebo, a courageous king of Tembuland. King Dalindyebo Sr. was inevitably caught up in the shenanigans of the apartheid government, intent on balkanizing South Africa into multiple ethnic states called Bantustans. He went to exile. His young child would also end up in exile. Upon his return in the late 1980s, King Buyelekhaya Dalindyebo was installed into the kingship of Eastern Tembuland. After the break, going from king to common criminal. The man in the dock is King Buyelekhaya Dalindyebo, known by his salutation, Zwelibanzi. Rows upon rows of the traditional chiefs in the OfTembuland kingdom, priests and pastors, the king's subjects, and the judge who would pronounce on his fate. The judge found King Buyelekhaya Dalindyebo guilty of culpable homicide, assault with intent to do grievous bodily harm, kidnapping and arson. Before passing on a 15-year jail sentence, Judge Alkima detailed the events of one night in the year 1995, where the young king lost his head at Chalacha village, events that would damn the monarch to this dock. It is a grim tale of mayhem and terror. A young man beaten to death, the dead man's friends assaulted, a mother and 6 children kidnapped, their home burnt. 3 other villagers' homes were also burnt. In 2009, 14 years later, King Buyelekhaya Dalindyebo was found guilty. He is appealing the case. Mbuzeni Mkwenkwana remembers that terrible night in 1995. He was one of the villagers whose house and possessions were burnt.
They started off by burning the Sonteya household, not far from here. They burnt that household and his possessions. He burnt the livestock. He then rounded off others to come here, to my household. He rounded up the villagers and they got my keys. Buyelekhaya also rounded up kids who were playing on a nearby sport ground. He told them to do frog jumps for his entertainment. He then told them to burn my house down. The kids told him they couldn't. Buyelekhaya then plucked out a straw of grass from the roof and struck a match and lit a fire. He told me so.
Where Mbuzeni's house once stood are now trenches where the foundation of the wall once lay. Having himself been on the wrong side of the law, Mbuzeni believes that King Dalindyebo should pay for his sins.
Why should he be forgiven? Because that would mean that a sinner can sin and run away and after 15 years return. So when the 15 years have lapsed, he must be forgiven? No, I do not agree. What I am saying is that the law should show itself to me and other South Africans that where crime is concerned, crime that I have been guilty of committing has no place in this country.
The victims of terror in Chalacha village have key things in common. They were all suspected of criminal activity in the area. It would seem that one of the reasons of their being terrorized was to expel them from the village. Decisions to banish a villager were in historical times the prerogative of traditional authorities. The decision would have been taken at a traditional court, resembling this one as portrayed in the SABC TV drama Ingqumbo Yeminyanya. This would appear an example of when customary law is in direct conflict with the Constitution and the rights it accords individuals.
I think there was nobody to advise King Dalindyebo to say that he could not exercise traditional authority to say that times had changed, the context was changed. I think the king was trying to implement a traditional authority that he'd maybe heard about, but actually he had no authority of that nature. that authority of that nature had not in fact existed.
Professor Perez also believes that customary law is a living, breathing entity and traditional leaders should heed this.
Customary law is not the 10 Commandments that God gave to Moses. It was something that was constantly in the process of changing. It was never meant to be frozen. It was never meant to be set in concrete. It was meant to be constantly negotiated and renegotiated. And I think that could be another very useful function of traditional leaders, is not simply taking customary law as if it came from God, but to evaluate its relevance and to constantly update it and rethink it.
Focus on King Buelekhaya Dalindyebo's criminal case seems to have fallen by the wayside as the attempt to form an independent state of Tembuland forges ahead. In a candid interview, the King's spokesperson for Dani Majola laid out the plans for the independent state of Tembuland.
Succession has happened. In other words, the royal family and Abatembu have taken an internal decision to cut links with the South African government. We have officially served the papers in December to the office of the president, and we have served other papers to the to the parliament, which is, as you know, the top structure in South Africa. That was on the 14th. So as of now, succession has happened. As of the 15th, technically, as of the 15th of January 2010, the ANC-led government has been occupying our land by force, which is something closer to invasion. That is as the things are now.
Why the decision to go for secession when many representations have been made as to why it is not only unconstitutional, but it does not make sense, it is not viable, it is not possible?
I did say that with regards to other ethnic groups, what is going to happen, we are digging a pre-colonial history. We are then going to say, on the basis of this pre-colonial history, this is our version. For example, we'll go to Amagcalega in the Eastern Cape. If we find that, for example, we prove our claims, as we are confident that we are going to prove our claims, we are not going to bring a bulldozer and say, Amagcalega, you are occupying our land, if I were to use the example of Amagcalega, for example. We are then going to say, we recognize that you have been occupying this land maybe for 150 years or whatever the exact period. We recognize that you have got some investments that we have already made in this land. Now, how can we then, as Abatembu and as yourselves as Amagcalega, live and work together side by side?
Part of the secession includes a claim of 60% of the territory of South Africa.
That's correct.
And it is territory that is already understood to belong to specific nations. For example, KwaZulu, Free State, even Johannesburg.
Yes.
Explain that, how you arrived at those conclusions
That
of
is
making
ours.
such audacious claims.
Okay. When we claim KwaZulu-Natal, Eastern Cape, Western Cape, Northern Cape, certain portions of Gauteng and Orange Free State, we are very clear that that is a land that we are legitimately entitled to. Because essentially, in the pre-colonial era, Abatembu settled firstly from Central Africa in what was called then Transvaal, which is where Johannesburg is built. And then because the nation grew, then we decided to split into two. The other group, which went to what we call today KwaZulu-Natal, and the other group then went to what is called the Cape. So that is why we're claiming all those provinces, and that is our land, and we're going to prove that claim. But when we're talking to people in KwaZulu-Natal since January 2009 until we had our rally in September in Durban, which was in KwaZulu-Natal, we filled the whole stadium there with Abatembu. A lot of people during that process came to us and gave us the land claims that they have in KwaZulu-Natal. So people know exactly which land belongs to who.
At a recent meeting at Bumbane Great Place, King Dalindyebo made it very clear that his spokesperson, Votani Majola, speaks on his and Abatembu's behalf.
Nansi ke ingxaki yamaphondo nayo khona. Ndifuna kule ndawo kaMajola. Mayicaca uba uMajola nala-task team yakhe nayo isami imi ayigunqi. Isami imi ngokuthunywa yile nkundla nokuthunywa nguzwelibanzi. Le ngathi uMajola ngokuthunywa ndim buxoki etywaleni. Into nabantu bathi xa sebebaleka into yabo kanye unopopi wabo bafuna amasebo sithele. uMajola apho uqala kwakhe lo mcimbi zikhona inkosi ezeze noMajola apha kum. Nkosi uZwelontombi. Funeka nizaze zonto. Mna uMajola ndimthanda kuba ukhwele ipone emhlophe ihashe endilithandayo ihashe elikhwelwa ndim. Liphala kakuhle lashi. Lelam ke ngoku kuba abaninilo balilahlile. Njengoba namhlanje ngathi abakazimiseli kul-own lashi. Lelam ke Bathembu.
Experts are unequivocal when it comes to the matter of secession.
First of all, it would be unconstitutional, and there are ways in which he would be found by any court of law to be acting against the Constitution, and therefore what he's doing unconstitutional. And if he continues, he would get the necessary punishment that would be emitted from him. If he carries it out using criminal means, in other words, challenging the very existence of the Constitution, there are many offenses that are associated with that. And I believe that the king may not want more criminal charges at this particular stage. So from a legal and constitutional point of view, there's very little room to move.
Well, the only parallel that one can think of, the only people who have seriously talked in terms of secession since 1994 have been the folk starters in the Freedom Front. And they've been advised by hundreds of lawyers, and they have gone all over the world looking for parallels and models and what have you. And they have not come close to anything or even a process or procedure. So one really doesn't anticipate that where the folk starters failed, this particular element will succeed.
Secession means you divide South Africa and you move out of South Africa. You are no longer part of South Africa. And that is destroying the South Africa under the constitutional order. It is unconstitutional. It would be like you are overthrowing the Constitution.
And secession cannot be an option here because secession is a very complex process which does not only involve grievances internally, but it involves the international community, like United Nations, agreeing that we will recognize you because you have legitimate claims. But in those claims, again, they seem not to have any solid historical foundation.
We have notified both the African Union and the United Nations. We have also informed in fact, all the SADC nations about our intentions.
Nobody can change South Africa as it is, except, of course, through a coup d'etat, military overthrow the government, take it over, and do whatever you like.
The reason why they adopt that view is because they look at how succession had been done in other continental states, Europe, US, and whatnot. And they forget that the the control of land in Africa is completely different from the manner in which land is controlled in Europe and USA and so on. So we've got an African way of controlling land.
And while the debate lingers and threats of secession continue, life in Tembuland moves on, albeit slowly, painfully, and with great difficulty for many of the residents.
Well, let's hope they can resolve this one peacefully. And that's it for tonight. Join us again next week for more award-winning investigative journalism. And don't forget to send us your comments or even video clips to truth@sabc.co.za. Thank you for watching and good night.